The insult didn't come during a fight. There was no screaming, no slamming of doors, no shattered plates. No theatrics. Just a casual sentence, dropped like a stone in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. You're not my mother anymore. You're just a burden now. It was said so plainly, so coldly, I didn't even flinch at first. My hands were deep in the sink, water hot, the last of the breakfast dishes clinking under my fingertips. I paused mid-rinse, a ceramic bowl in one hand, a sponge in the other. I turned slightly, not sure I'd heard her right. "What?" I asked, barely above a whisper. Meredith stood at the kitchen counter, slicing strawberries into a glass container for Olivia's lunch. She didn't even look up. "You heard me." I set the bowl down and turned off the faucet. My chest tightened, my breath coming in shallow bursts. What did I do? Now she turned, still holding the knife, her eyes colder than I'd ever seen them. "You stayed." That's what she said. As if my presence alone, my breath in the house, my folded laundry in the corner drawer, my voice humming lullabies to my granddaughter, was an offense. I waited, heart pounding, but she wasn't finished. "You said it was just until your hip healed." 2, maybe 3 weeks. That was 11 months ago, Mom. 11. I didn't sign up to be your caretaker. Caretaker. That word echoed in my ears like a curse. I'd made my own tea, washed my own clothes, cleaned their bathroom, for God's sake. Every single day. I opened my mouth to speak, but she barreled on, now walking toward me with her arms crossed, her voice rising just enough to make my shoulders tense. "You don't contribute. You don't pay rent. You cook sometimes and fold a few towels and think that makes up for it. Meanwhile, Daniel and I are stretched thin, Olivia's getting clingy, and I'm tired." "I didn't mean to be a burden," I managed to say. "Well, you are." The words landed like a slap. "And Olivia's not helping. She thinks you're some fairy godmother. She cries if you don't tuck her in. She mimics your little sayings." I found her writing "kindness is strength" on a sticky note last week. "What even is that?" "It's something your grandmother used to tell me," I said quietly. "It helped me when I was scared." She snorted. "Yeah, well, maybe I didn't want my daughter growing up thinking softness is a virtue. This world isn't soft, Mom. I want her to be strong." "She's strong," I said. "She's 9. And she's already smarter and braver than me." Her voice sharpened, and suddenly I realized I'd stepped on a landmine. "Is that what you were going to say?" "No, Meredith, that's not." She held up a hand. "Save it. I know how you look at me. Like you pity me. Like I'm some cold-hearted villain because I don't treat Olivia like a baby. You want to be the hero. You want her to choose you. That's not true." "It is. And I'm done pretending I don't see it." Silence filled the kitchen like a fog. I didn't recognize this version of her. This wasn't the daughter I raised, the girl who used to braid my hair while I sat on the porch swing, or whisper "I love you" through tears when she left for college. This was someone else. Hardened. Walled off. Hostile. "I never wanted to compete with you," I said finally. She laughed bitterly. "Well, you lost anyway." She turned and walked out, leaving the strawberries half-sliced and the knife gleaming under the kitchen light. I stood there, hand gripping the edge of the sink, heart galloping in my chest. Later that day, I found my pillow and blanket folded on the living room couch. My guest room, what had been a guest room, was already rearranged, my few belongings packed into a plastic bin in the hallway. No note. No explanation. When I asked Daniel what was going on, he barely looked up from his laptop. "Meredith said you'd be more comfortable in the living room. The sofa pulls out." "It's not about comfort," I said. "It's about being pushed aside." He sighed like I was being dramatic. "It's temporary. We just need space. She's under a lot of pressure right now." That night, Olivia crept downstairs, confused to find me sleeping in the middle of the living room. "Why are you out here, Grandma?" "I needed a change of scenery," I lied. She climbed under the blanket with me, her small body warm against mine. "I don't like it when Mommy's mad at you," she whispered. "Me neither, baby. I still want your stories. You'll always have them." She fell asleep with her hand wrapped around my wrist, like she was anchoring me to the earth. But I was already drifting. Mentally, emotionally. I knew this house, this arrangement, this forced silence, they weren't sustainable. Not anymore. The next morning, I quietly packed a bag. I waited until Meredith and Daniel left for work. I wrote a short note and left it on the counter. Meredith, thank you for letting me stay this long. I'm sorry things ended like this. I hope you find peace. Tell Olivia I'll always love her. I kissed Olivia's drawing on the fridge, one she made of me with a bright purple scarf and giant heart stickers, and walked out without looking back. I had $312 in my purse, my medication, and a photograph of my late husband. That was it. No car. No job. No plan. But I had air in my lungs. And I had finally heard the truth from my own daughter's lips. I was no longer her mother, just a burden. And that realization, as heartbreaking as it was, set me free. Before we continue, take a moment to let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to more powerful stories like this one. The first place I slept after leaving Meredith's house wasn't a shelter, or a motel, or a friend's couch. It was a converted storage unit behind an old bakery, tucked in the back alleyway of a strip mall. A small hand-painted sign read, "Studio for rent, quiet tenant only, cash preferred." The door was dented, the lock stuck, and the air inside smelled like old yeast and dust. But it was mine. For $185 a week, cash up front, the landlord gave me a key, a mattress on the floor, and 2 battered kitchen chairs. The toilet was in the corner, walled off by a crooked divider curtain. There was a single burner on a hot plate and a mini fridge that hummed like it had a grudge. I didn't care. I dropped my bag on the floor, sank onto the mattress, and cried for the first time in months. Not because I missed the house, but because I didn't feel watched. No one huffed when I boiled water. No one told me I was doing too much or not enough. No one rolled their eyes if I sang an old hymn while folding laundry. No one moved my pillow to the couch like I was a guest who'd overstayed. That first night, I made instant noodles on the burner, wrapped myself in 2 sweaters, and watched a game show on my phone with the volume barely audible. I didn't sleep much, but I didn't feel invisible either. And that, somehow, felt like progress. The next morning, I bought oatmeal, instant coffee, and toothpaste from the dollar store down the block. I passed a mural painted on the side of the bakery wall, a sunflower, peeling slightly, stretching upward despite cracks in the brick. I stared at it for a long time. A woman in a hairnet came out to smoke and caught me looking. "Used to be brighter," she said. "Faded in the sun." I smiled faintly. "Still beautiful, though." She looked at me closer. "You renting the unit in the back?" I nodded. "You the quiet type?" "I'm the exhausted type." She laughed, then softened. "Well, welcome. We don't get many new folks around here. You need day-old bread, just knock on the back door." "I'm here early." "Thank you," I said, meaning it. Her name was Gloria. I'd later learned she was divorced twice, allergic to shellfish, and raised 3 boys mostly on her own. But that day, she was just a stranger who offered stale bread and didn't ask questions. 3 days passed. I stayed off the grid. I didn't call Meredith. I didn't text Olivia. I didn't want to cry in front of anyone, especially a child who still thought I was magic. Instead, I made a routine. Mornings were oatmeal and news on my cracked screen. Midday, I'd walk the strip mall, nodding at strangers, checking bulletin boards for part-time cleaning gigs or senior centers needing volunteers. I didn't have a car, but my legs still worked, and my cane was packed in the side of my duffel, just in case. One afternoon, while sitting outside the bakery with a cup of Gloria's weak coffee, I spotted Olivia's name on my phone. A voicemail. My heart stuttered. I listened, bracing. "Hi, Grandma," her small voice said, careful, sweet. "Mom said you had to go take care of someone sick. Is that true? She said you'd be back later. I miss you. I saved you a seat at music class, but you weren't there. That's okay. I drew you something. Okay. Love you. Bye." The air left my lungs. She didn't know.
Meredith Hatlit.
She told her I was coming back. I replayed it 3 times. Olivia's voice, soft, uncertain, trying to be brave. That night, I sat on the floor with my old photo album, flipping through worn pages of birthdays, ice cream cones, Halloween costumes. I found a picture of Meredith when she was 7, in overalls and pigtails, holding a frog. I smiled bitterly. I'd loved her fiercely, done everything I could. And now she was raising a daughter who thought love was disposable, who thought soft was a flaw. I made a decision that night. I wouldn't disappear. I wouldn't show up at their door. But I would write a real letter, pen on paper, to Olivia. I used a wrinkled notepad I'd tucked into my bag and wrote in cursive the way she liked. Dear Olivia, I miss you more than all the stars in the sky. I miss your music. I miss your laugh. I miss our stories. I'm okay. I promise. I just needed some time to be quiet and take care of myself. I want you to remember something. Kindness is strength, even when people make you feel small. I love you always.
Love. Grandma.
I mailed it to their house the next morning. No return address. The following week, I got a postcard. No envelope. No handwriting. Just a picture of a sunflower and a short message, clearly written by Olivia. I remember your stories. I still believe them. I stared at the card for a long time, my fingers trembling. She remembered.
She still saw me.
And even if Meredith never did again, that one small light was enough to keep me warm. It had been 3 weeks since I'd left Meredith's house. 3 weeks since I'd walked away with a bag, a broken heart, and the weight of her words still echoing in my chest. I thought the silence might stretch forever, that I'd fade from their lives like an old photograph shoved in a drawer. But silence doesn't last when someone needs a scapegoat. The knock came just after 6 p.m. on a Sunday. Sharp. Repeated. No hesitation. I froze. No one ever visited me here. Gloria came by sometimes with bread or gossip, but she always knocked twice and called my name softly. This wasn't soft. This was a demand. I peeked through the curtain covering the small window. My breath caught. Daniel, my son-in-law, standing there with a frown on his face and a file folder in his hands. I didn't open the door right away. I debated pretending I wasn't home. But I knew he'd knock again. Maybe louder. Maybe long enough to draw attention from the bakery staff or the old man 2 doors down who sold used lamps out of his garage. So I opened it.
Barely.
Just enough to look him in the eye. Daniel, I said. Not warmly. Not cruelly. Just there. He exhaled like he'd been holding it. Evelyn, can I come in? I didn't move. Why? He gestured vaguely at the folder. There are some things we should talk about. Meredith didn't want to come. I opened the door 2 more inches. Then maybe you shouldn't be here either. He hesitated, then nodded. Okay, I'll keep it short. He didn't wait for an invitation. He stepped inside, looked around the small space with a subtle grimace, and sat in one of the wobbly chairs before I could protest. This is where you're living? He asked. It's mine, I replied. And that's more than I can say for the last place. He blinked but didn't argue. Instead, he opened the folder and pulled out a sheet of paper. I came to give you this, he said. It's from Olivia's school. She drew something for you, insisted it be mailed, but she forgot to write your address. He handed it to me. It was a drawing. Me and Olivia, sitting on the porch swing from Meredith's old house. She'd drawn my cane beside me and labeled it Magic Stick. Above us, in her crooked handwriting, it said, Kindness is strength. My throat tightened. She misses you, Daniel added, quieter now. But she doesn't understand. Meredith told her you needed to go help someone else. I folded the picture carefully and placed it on my nightstand. She's not wrong. I did need to help someone. Myself. Daniel rubbed his jaw, clearly unsure what to say next. Look, I know things got tense. Meredith's under a lot of pressure. Work's been unstable. Money's tight. And your presence, well, it complicated things. Because I made dinner? Or because I gave your daughter the one gentle moment of her day? He looked down at his hands. Because you reminded her of who she used to be. That made me pause. He shook his head. Meredith hasn't been the same since her dad passed. She buried herself in control, in rules, in expectations. You were like a mirror, and she didn't like what it showed. I sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to meet his eyes. That doesn't excuse how she treated me. No, he said softly. It doesn't. We sat in silence for a few seconds. The hum of the fridge filled the room like static. Then he looked at me again, this time more serious. Has Olivia written to you before? I looked up, surprised. Why? He pulled out another piece of paper, a photo of the postcard she'd sent me. Meredith found this in the trash. She said Olivia was getting confused and shouldn't be reaching out without permission. Anger flared in my chest, sharp and instant. It was a sunflower, a symbol. That little girl was holding on to one memory of kindness, and your wife tossed it in the garbage? He raised both hands, palms open. I'm not defending her. I'm just telling you what's going on. I stood, too charged to sit. Then let me tell you what's going on. Your daughter is slowly being taught that warmth is weakness. That love is a transaction. And the only thing that kept her from shutting down completely was the 20 minutes a day she had with me, drawing, talking, singing songs she wasn't embarrassed to know. If Meredith hated me for that, fine. But don't stand in my space pretending she did it for Olivia. Daniel's eyes dropped to the floor. I didn't let up. She didn't just move my pillow. She boxed at my life like it was clutter. She erased me. And now she's erasing me from Olivia's too. Daniel didn't argue. He simply stood, closed the folder, and sighed. I shouldn't have come, he said quietly. No, I agreed. But at least now you know. He opened the door to leave. But before he stepped out, he paused and looked back. For what it's worth, I think Olivia got the best parts of you, not Meredith. I didn't reply. I just shut the door behind him and locked it. That night, I taped Olivia's drawing to the wall above my bed. I stared at it for a long time, not crying, not angry, just steady. I whispered aloud, not to anyone in particular. I am not a burden. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. I didn't expect to hear from Daniel again. Not after the way we left things. Tense, quiet, with more truths than either of us were ready to admit. But 4 days later, my phone rang. It was late, nearly 9 p.m., and I was just finishing a bowl of canned soup when the screen lit up. Meredith. I froze. For a moment, I just stared at the name, thumb hovering over the screen, heart thudding in my chest. I hadn't spoken to her since I left. Not one call. Not one message. And now, suddenly, she was reaching out? I let it go to voicemail. 10 seconds passed. Then another call. Daniel. This time I picked up.
Slowly, cautiously.
Hello. His voice was shaky, rushed. Evelyn. I didn't know who else to call. I sat up straighter. What's wrong? It's Olivia. She ran away. My stomach dropped. What do you mean she ran away? We don't know when exactly. Maybe an hour ago. We were arguing, Meredith and I, and then we realized she wasn't in her room. Her window's open. She left a note. I stood up so fast the chair scraped across the floor. What did the note say? She said she was going to find you. Silence. Pure, heart-stopping silence. I couldn't breathe. I looked toward the door like she might appear right then and there, small shoes thumping against the alley pavement, sunflower backpack over one shoulder. She's just a kid, I said hoarsely. She doesn't know where I live. She doesn't even have my address. Daniel exhaled shakily. I think she memorized the bakery name from your postcard. We found her internet search history. She looked up this area. She's trying to get to you, Evelyn. I pressed a hand over my mouth, dizzy with panic. Call the police, I snapped.
Now.
File the report. We already did. They're looking. I was halfway into my coat before he finished the sentence. I'm going out to look, I said. I know this neighborhood. I'll check the strip mall, the bus stop, the bakery, everywhere. Evelyn, just please, if you find her, call us.
I didn't respond.
I just hung up and ran. My knees weren't what they used to be. The night air hit cold and sharp, and I'd left my gloves inside. But none of that mattered. I searched the alley behind the bakery first, calling her name over and over. My voice cracked against the wind. Olivia. Baby, it's Grandma. Olivia. No answer. I checked the bus bench down the block. Empty. The dollar store closed. The corner diner, just a few tired teenagers behind the counter, no little girl in sight. I asked everyone I passed. Have you seen a little girl? Brown curls, sunflower backpack, maybe wearing a pink coat. Most people shook their heads. One older man said, "Think I saw someone like that near the laundromat. Looked like she was crying." I sprinted. The laundromat's lights were still on, and as I reached the doorway, I saw her. Tucked into the corner between two plastic chairs, arms wrapped tightly around her knees, face red from tears and wind. Olivia, I breathed. She looked up. Her eyes widened. Grandma. She bolted from the chair and threw herself into my arms. I dropped to my knees and caught her, ignoring the pain in my joints, burying my face in her hair. I found you, she sobbed. I found you. I've got you, I whispered. You're safe. I've got you. We stayed like that for a long moment, her trembling in my arms, me holding her like she was made of glass. I pulled back to look at her face. Are you okay? Did anyone hurt you? She shook her head.
No.
I couldn't take it anymore. Mommy was yelling again. She said I couldn't talk about you. She said I needed to stop being dramatic. I clenched my jaw. So you ran. She nodded, wiping her nose on her sleeve. I remembered the bakery name. The picture you sent had part of it showing. I searched it at school, when no one was looking. You're so smart, I said, voice breaking. She looked up at me, eyes wide. Can I stay with you? Just for a little while? Please. I didn't hesitate. Of course. I stood slowly, took her hand, and walked her back to my studio, shielding her from the wind with my coat. Inside, she looked around with awe. It's small. It is. But it feels safe. I smiled. It is. I gave her my sweater to wear and warmed up the leftover soup. She devoured it like it was the best thing she'd ever tasted. I tucked her into my bed and sat beside her until her breathing slowed and her eyes closed. Only then did I text Daniel. I found her. She's safe. She's staying here tonight. He replied 5 minutes later.
Thank you.
I'm sorry for everything. I'll talk to Meredith. I'll call tomorrow. I didn't answer. I turned off the phone and slid into the small space beside Olivia, listening to her soft breathing, one arm flung over my shoulder. That night, I didn't dream of loss. I dreamed of sunflowers, drawn in crayon, blooming along the edge of cracked sidewalks. Morning came fast. The bakery next door started its prep around 5:30. The scent of rising dough slipped through the studio's thin walls, warm and sweet. I opened my eyes slowly, afraid to move too quickly, afraid it might shatter whatever fragile piece had settled in the room overnight. Olivia was still asleep beside me, curled up like a kitten, one hand tucked under her cheek, the other gripping the hem of my old sweater like it was a lifeline. I let myself look at her. Really look. She didn't have the same sharp edges Meredith had at her age. She hadn't learned yet to carry her pain like armor. No, Olivia still believed in gentle things. Her eyes still scanned rooms for comfort. Her heart still looked for safe places to land. And somehow, even after everything, she had landed here. With me. I eased out of bed, careful not to wake her, and started the kettle on the hot plate. The steam filled the room quickly. I set 2 mugs on the counter, laid out the last of the bread Gloria had brought by, and then just stood there in the quiet, waiting. Because I knew they would come. And they did. At exactly 7:42 a.m., the knock came. Not loud. Not rushed. Just 3 measured raps on the door. Professional. Controlled. I opened it slowly. Daniel stood there again, dark circles under his eyes, hands deep in his coat pockets. But this time, he wasn't alone. Meredith stood just behind him. Her face was unreadable. Not angry. Not relieved, just blank, like she was trying to will herself into neutrality, like any emotion might betray her. Where's she? She asked. She's asleep, I replied, stepping fully into the doorway. She ran until nearly midnight. She needs rest. Meredith crossed her arms. She scared us half to death. No, I said calmly. She scared you into remembering she's a child. That's not the same thing. Daniel shifted beside her. Evelyn, we just want to see her. Please. I studied them both for a long moment. Then I stepped aside. The space was so small it felt crowded the moment they entered. Meredith glanced around like she was inspecting something beneath her. Daniel moved carefully, eyes scanning the room until they landed on the small figure still bundled in my bed. Liv, he said softly. Olivia stirred. She blinked, confused for a second, and then sat up, eyes wide when she saw them. Daddy. Daniel stepped forward. Hey, sweet pea. You okay? She nodded slowly, but then looked at Meredith and shrank back slightly. I'm sorry I left. I didn't know what else to do. Meredith didn't answer. She just stood near the door, arms crossed tightly, lips pressed into a line. I moved to sit on the edge of the bed, between them. You don't need to apologize, I told Olivia. You're not in trouble. You were brave. I just wanted to be somewhere it was quiet, she whispered. Somewhere I could breathe. The silence that followed was deafening. Meredith cleared her throat. Olivia, honey, it's time to come home. Olivia looked down. Will Grandma be there? Daniel glanced at Meredith, who said nothing. I answered for them.
No, sweetie.
I won't be. But why not? Her eyes filled with tears. I don't want to go if you're not there. Because sometimes, I said gently, adults forget how to treat people. And until they remember, we have to choose peace over what's familiar. Meredith's jaw tightened. You're filling her head with confusing ideas. No, I said, still calm. I'm reminding her she's allowed to want safety. That's not confusion. That's survival.
Daniel knelt beside the bed.
Liv, we want to try again. Better this time. We really do. You said that last time, she murmured. And then you told me to stop being soft like Grandma. Meredith's head snapped toward her. I never said. You did. Olivia cut her off, eyes sharp now. You said kindness makes people weak. You said I was too attached, that it wasn't normal. Meredith's face flushed. And there it was. The moment Olivia stopped protecting her mother's version of the truth. I just wanted her to stay, she added, looking down. I just wanted both things. Daniel took her hand. We'll figure this out. I promise. I stood then. I'm not keeping her, I said. But I won't let her feel discarded. Not like I did. Meredith didn't look at me. Can we go? Olivia stood slowly, still in my sweater, and hugged me tight. Can I come back? Anytime, I said, brushing her hair back. This door is always open for you. She stepped into her father's arms, then followed them both out the door, shoulders hunched, eyes distant. I didn't cry. Not yet. I waited until the door clicked shut. Then I sat on the mattress and wept, because I had protected her. But I couldn't keep her. And there's no ache quite like loving someone you're forced to let walk away. 3 days passed. 3 quiet days filled with too much time and too little air. I kept Olivia's drawing taped to the wall above my bed like a lighthouse. I made tea in the mornings and oatmeal in the evenings and tried to pretend the stillness was peace. But it wasn't peace. It was absence. A hollow kind of silence that didn't soothe. The kind that echoed when I walked across the floor. The kind that reminded me of a child-sized sweater folded carefully beside my pillow. I didn't hear from Meredith. Not even Daniel. No texts. No updates. Just the weight of uncertainty pressing against the edges of every moment. Had Olivia been punished for leaving? Was she okay? Did she cry at night the way I did? On the 4th morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something told me to pick up. Hello. Is this Evelyn Carter? A woman asked, polite but firm.
Yes.
Who's this? This is Ms. Delaney. I'm the school counselor at Olivia's elementary. My stomach tightened. Is she all right? She's physically fine, the woman said, with a pause that made my chest constrict. But emotionally, she's been struggling since she returned home. I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. What happened? She told me she doesn't feel safe talking at home anymore, that her parents get angry when she brings you up, that she's been crying every morning before class. I pressed a hand to my heart. She also said, the counselor continued, that the only place she feels listened to is your apartment, that she feels calm there. Her words. My throat tightened. She ran away to get to me. Did she tell you that? She did. There was another pause. I'm not calling to get anyone in trouble, she added carefully. But as a mandated reporter, I have to flag emotional distress, especially when the child makes repeated references to wanting to live elsewhere. I closed my eyes. What does that mean legally? Nothing immediate. But it means that if this escalates or continues, it could trigger a welfare check. I opened my eyes slowly. So, what can I do?
You could come in, she said.
Talk to me. Maybe talk to Olivia while she's in a neutral space.
She wants that.
She asked me to call you. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I'll be there. She gave me the time and address. I hung up and stared at the blank wall across from me. My hands were shaking. Olivia wanted me. And this time, someone had listened. When I arrived at the school, the hallways were quiet, except for the faint buzz of fluorescent lights and the occasional scuff of sneakers against tile. A secretary led me down a narrow corridor to a cozy office filled with cushions, beanbag chairs, and books with titles like Feelings Matter and The Brave Inside You. Ms. Delaney stood when I entered. Mid-40s.
Clear eyes.
No nonsense. She extended a hand. Thank you for coming. I nodded and sat across from her. She gestured to the door. She's in the reading corner. I didn't tell her you were coming, just in case. My heart raced. Can I see her? She nodded. I stood and turned toward the far end of the office where a small curtain partitioned off the corner. I stepped around it, and there she was, sitting on a beanbag, knees to her chest, reading the same Magic Tree House book I'd read to her a dozen times. She looked up slowly. When she saw me, her face cracked wide open. Grandma. She jumped into my arms, so fast, I nearly lost my balance. I caught her, hugged her, squeezed her until I felt her little shoulders shake. I missed you, she whispered into my sweater. I missed you too, baby. She pulled back, eyes searching mine. Can I stay with you? Just for a little while? Please. Tears burned the back of my eyes. You know I want that, but it's not up to just us. She bit her lip. I told Mommy I didn't want to sleep there anymore. She said I was being ungrateful. I ran my hand through her hair. You're not ungrateful. You're brave for saying how you feel. We sat like that for a while, cross-legged on the floor. Then Ms. Delaney returned. I'd like to propose something, she said gently. We can't make legal decisions here, obviously. But what we can do is document what Olivia has shared, gather written statements, and make a formal referral to family services. That would open the door to temporary custody review. I looked down at Olivia, who was now clinging to my arm like an anchor. I knew the risks. I knew how ugly Meredith could get when she felt exposed. But I also knew one thing without question. This child did not feel safe. And she trusted me. I want to file, I said. Whatever we need to do. I'll cooperate fully. Ms. Delaney nodded. I thought you might. She handed me a clipboard with a form attached. I wrote everything, carefully, honestly. Every detail I could recall. The night she ran away. The things Olivia told me. Meredith's anger. The couch. The pillow. The silence. When I finished, I passed it back. Olivia squeezed my hand. I don't want to go back there tonight, she whispered. I looked to Ms. Delaney. We can call it a cool-down hold, she said. An emergency stay request. It's rare, but if Child Services approves, Olivia can stay with you until the custody review hearing. Could be a few days. Maybe longer. Make the call, I said, without flinching. 2 hours later, Olivia walked out of the school beside me, her backpack bouncing, hand wrapped tightly in mine. She wasn't crying. She was humming. A tune I hadn't heard in weeks. The same one I used to sing while folding laundry. The same one Meredith always called soft. But in that moment, it didn't sound weak. It sounded like survival. Olivia had been with me for 4 days. 4 days of unspoken relief, of quiet dinners, of bedtime stories that didn't end with slammed doors or shouts through the walls. Her laughter had returned, hesitant at first, like it needed permission. But by the second night, it echoed against the peeling paint of my studio walls like it belonged there. She slept with one arm draped across my chest every night, like she was afraid I'd disappear again. And I didn't blame her. I hadn't told her everything about the paperwork, the legal process, the fact that her mother would be fighting to get her back. I didn't want to scare her. I just wanted her to feel safe, even if only for now. On the morning of the 5th day, I got the call. The voice on the line was from family court. The custody hearing is set for next Friday, 9 a.m. Temporary protective status will remain in place until then. Thank you, I said, my fingers trembling slightly as I hung up. The moment I turned around, Olivia looked up from her coloring book. Was that about me? I smiled faintly. It was about us. She nodded like she already knew, like she'd expected this piece to have a time limit. That afternoon, I walked her to school hand in hand. I kissed her forehead at the gate. She looked up at me and whispered, "You'll be there after school, right?" "Always." She gave me a weak smile and disappeared through the doors. I stood on the sidewalk for a while after she left, trying to gather myself, trying to prepare for what I knew was coming. The fight. Because Meredith wouldn't let go without one. Sure enough, less than 3 hours later, my phone rang again. "Daniel." I answered. "Evelyn," he said, tone flat, controlled. "We need to talk." "I assume you heard?" "We did. She asked to stay here, Daniel. She told the school counselor that your house didn't feel safe." There was a pause. "I know," he said, almost too quietly. "You know? I read the report. The school called us." I waited, confused. "Then what is this call about?" I wanted to talk before Meredith gets involved with lawyers." That made me sit down. "She's already retained someone, hasn't she?"
Yes.
"She's furious. She's saying you manipulated Olivia, that you turned her against us." I laughed once, sharp and bitter. "I didn't have to. You all did that yourselves." "I'm not disagreeing," he said, surprising me. I don't want this to get worse." "Worse for who?" I asked. "For Meredith's reputation? Or for the little girl who had to climb out of a window to feel heard?" He didn't answer right away. "Then, she's going to bring up your living situation. Say the studio's not stable, that you don't have income, that you're not mentally fit to raise a child." I exhaled slowly. "So, she's not fighting for Olivia. She's fighting to win." "Yes." A long pause followed. Then Daniel said, almost in a whisper, "She loves Olivia, but she doesn't know how to show it. And she sees you as a threat, not because you're dangerous, but because Olivia chooses you. She shouldn't have to choose at all." "No," he agreed. "But Meredith made her. You just caught her when she fell." I didn't know what to say. I didn't expect sympathy from Daniel. Not after months of silence. Not after his part in pushing me out. "She's going to drag your name through the mud, Evelyn," he said finally. "Just be ready. I've lived through worse." "I believe you." I hung up. That night, I sat Olivia down after dinner and told her the truth. Not all of it, just enough. "There's going to be a meeting soon. A judge. A room with adults who want to decide where you'll live." She looked up slowly. "Are you going to fight for me?" The question broke me. I took both her hands in mine. "I already am." She nodded, and for the first time, I saw something new in her eyes. Not just hope. Conviction. "I'll tell them I want to stay," she whispered. "Even if Mommy gets mad. I'm not afraid of her anymore." I pressed my forehead to hers. "You are the bravest person I know." The next few days blurred into quiet preparation. I met with Ms. Delaney again. She offered to testify. The school therapist offered to write a report. I printed every message Meredith had sent, every voicemail, every cold, clipped command masked as concern. I wrote a statement of my own, 6 pages long, handwritten, outlining everything. The way Olivia flinched at sudden noises. The way she'd asked me to sing her to sleep again. The way she called this tiny studio the quiet place. And still, as the hearing approached, I felt the weight of it all settle deeper into my bones. Because the truth didn't always win. Because I'd been called a burden. Because they could still take her from me. 2 days before the hearing, Olivia came home from school with something folded in her backpack. She handed it to me, cheeks flushed. "I made this at school," she said. "For the judge." I unfolded the paper. It was a drawing of 2 houses. One big and sharp-edged, with cracked windows and people yelling inside. The other was small,
Bright.
there were sunflowers on the windowsill. Inside it, 2 stick figures held hands. She had labeled them, me and Grandma. At the bottom, in careful block letters, she had written, "I feel safe here." I cried, holding the paper like it was sacred. And I knew, no matter what happened next, she had already chosen peace. Friday arrived wrapped in gray skies and a cold wind, the kind of morning that made everything feel heavier. I woke before the alarm, barely slept at all. Olivia was curled beside me like she had been every night that week, arms tucked close, face turned to me like I was her compass, her protector. Today, I had to be. I let her sleep a little longer while I made toast, laid out the least wrinkled clothes we both had, and packed her drawing, "I feel safe here," carefully into a plastic folder I borrowed from Gloria. It was creased but clean. And I didn't care if it looked perfect. What mattered was what was inside it. Olivia stirred while I zipped my coat. She sat up, hair wild, eyes already alert. "Is it today?" I nodded. "It is." She looked down. "Am I allowed to say what I want?" I knelt beside the bed. "You're allowed to tell the truth. That's all you ever have to do." She nodded slowly. "Then I'm ready." We took the 7:30 bus downtown, side by side on the cracked vinyl seats, her small hands folded in her lap, her legs swinging just above the floor. I held her drawing in my bag and whispered little reminders she already knew. "You don't have to answer anything that makes you uncomfortable. You can ask to speak to the judge alone. You're not in trouble. You're allowed to love everyone and still know where you feel safe." She just squeezed my hand in reply. The courthouse was cold, fluorescent lit, with buzzing lights and marble floors that echoed every footstep like a warning. We sat outside the hearing room for 15 minutes before they called us in. Meredith was already inside. She was dressed like a woman on a mission, blazer, heels, hair pulled so tight it looked painful. Daniel sat beside her, jaw clenched, eyes flicking back and forth like he wasn't sure what side he was supposed to be on. The judge was a woman in her 60s, stern but not unkind. Her nameplate read Honorable Marcia Klein. I held Olivia's hand as we took our seat. The clerk began the hearing. Statements were read. First, Meredith's lawyer. He was slick, confident, polished in a way that made my stomach churn. "Your Honor," the child in question ran away during a moment of family tension. "She's been emotionally manipulated by the respondent, Evelyn Carter, who does not have legal custody, stable income, or suitable living arrangements. She is nearly 70, he added, with no formal guardianship training." Meredith didn't look at me, but I saw her jaw twitch. I knew she was waiting for me to shrink, to fold. I didn't. Ms. Delaney from the school was next. She stepped up to the microphone and calmly, clearly, read from her observations. Olivia consistently expressed feelings of emotional neglect. She used terms like scared to talk and like I don't exist. Her demeanor changed dramatically after staying with Ms. Carter, calmer, more focused, more confident. She drew this for the judge. She handed over the picture. The room was silent as Judge Klein looked at it. Then the judge spoke. "I'd like to hear from Olivia directly." Meredith stiffened. I turned to Olivia. "Do you want me with you?" She nodded. We approached the small table. Olivia stood tall, feet barely touching the floor from the high chair, but her voice was steady. The judge smiled kindly. Olivia, can you tell me why you ran away? She looked down at her shoes, then up, because no one was listening to me, and I felt like I was disappearing. My throat tightened. The judge leaned forward. What does that mean, sweetheart? She glanced toward Meredith, then looked straight at the judge. At home, I'm supposed to be strong. I'm not allowed to cry or talk about Grandma. Mommy says it makes me weak. But when I'm with Grandma, I don't feel weak. I feel safe. The room was dead silent. Do you want to go back home? The judge asked gently. Olivia shook her head. Not if she's going to be mad at me all the time. I want to stay with Grandma for now, until it's calm again. I felt my heart burst open, proud and shattered and terrified all at once. The judge nodded, making notes. We returned to our seat. Meredith's lawyer objected immediately. This is an emotional reaction, not a legal foundation. But the judge held up her hand. I've heard enough. She looked between us, me, Olivia, Meredith, and then back at her notes. I'm not terminating parental rights. That's not what this hearing is about. But I am granting Evelyn Carter temporary legal custody until a full home study can be completed. Visitation will be scheduled, but Olivia will reside with Miss Carter until further notice. Meredith gasped. Daniel didn't speak. He just lowered his head. The gavel didn't bang. There were no dramatic sound effects. Just the quiet click of paperwork being shuffled and stamped. But to us, it sounded like freedom. Outside the courtroom, Meredith stormed past us without a word. Daniel lingered. She's going to be furious, he said quietly. I'm not afraid of her anymore, I replied. He nodded once, then looked at Olivia. Be good, okay? She gave him a soft smile. I always was. You just didn't see it. He walked away, and that was the last thing any of us said. That night, back in the studio, we celebrated with grilled cheese and orange soda. Olivia taped her drawing back on the wall. Only this time, she drew a second house next to it. A bigger one. Still yellow. Still small. But it had flowers in every window. I think we're going to get a new place soon, she said. One with a bathtub that doesn't squeak. I laughed. From your mouth to God's ears. As we curled up on the bed, I looked at her and asked, Are you scared? She shook her head. Not anymore. Neither was I. Because now the world knew what I'd known all along. She wasn't broken. And neither was I. 3 weeks had passed since the hearing. 3 quiet, ordinary, beautiful weeks. There were no slammed doors. No hushed insults behind walls. No forced silences or cold stares at breakfast. Just the sound of pencils scratching on homework sheets. Toast popping from the toaster. Olivia humming quietly to herself as she organized her tiny bookshelf for the 3rd time that week. She called our studio the Peace Pod. And somehow, that made the uneven floor, the cracked window, and the flickering bathroom light feel like a sanctuary. The home study came fast. A woman named Ms. Navarro arrived one Wednesday morning with a clipboard and practical shoes. She had kind eyes and the kind of calm demeanor that made you want to tell the truth, even when it might cost you something. She asked questions. About income. About history. About how Olivia was adjusting. She laughs now. I told her. Not all day, not every day. But when she does, it's not forced. Ms. Navarro smiled and made a note. Olivia insisted on showing her everything, the shared dresser drawers, the windows she covered in paper snowflakes, the leftover lasagna in the mini fridge. She makes the best grilled cheese, Olivia said proudly, clinging to my arm. The woman's eyes softened again. And how do you feel here, Olivia? Safe. Olivia didn't hesitate.
Yes.
I feel seen here. That answer, those 4 words, felt like a verdict before the ink even dried. When Ms. Navarro left, she paused at the door. You're doing something important, she said. Sometimes the most broken places grow the strongest roots. I didn't cry until she was gone. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in a long time, I believed that maybe this could last. 2 days later, the official letter arrived. The custody arrangement had been extended for 6 months, pending a permanent guardianship review. I held the letter in my hands like it was gold. Olivia read it aloud, slowly, mouthing the longer words like she was tasting them. So that means I can stay. It means, I said, they finally see what we already knew. She grinned. And then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. Can we find a new place? Like a real one? With space? I knelt beside her. You want a place with your own room? And curtains, she added. And maybe a door that doesn't stick. So that weekend, we started looking. It wasn't easy. Every listing felt just out of reach. Too expensive, too far, too rundown, but then Gloria from the bakery handed me a flyer someone had left on her back door. Small 2-bedroom for rent. Backyard. Quiet neighborhood. Sliding scale available for seniors or guardians. Owner lives nearby. Pets welcome. The photo showed a tiny yellow bungalow with chipped paint and a crooked front porch. I didn't care. I called the number. The woman who answered sounded younger than I expected. Her name was Charmaine. She inherited the house from her grandmother and wanted it rented to someone who'd love it right. She asked me to come see it that afternoon. When Olivia and I stepped through the creaky front gate, we both froze. Sunflowers. A small row of them lined the porch, faces tilted toward the sun like they were waiting for someone to arrive. Olivia gasped, "Grandma, look." I did. And I knew. This was it. The inside wasn't fancy, just 2 small bedrooms, a kitchen the size of a closet, and floors that groaned with every step. But there was light. Real light. Not the kind that buzzed overhead, but sunlight that poured through every window and made even the old wood shine. Charmaine handed me the keys the next day. "I'll give you a discounted rate," she said. "I'd rather see this place full of joy than dollar signs." I thanked her, tears in my eyes. We moved in the next week. It didn't take long. 2 suitcases, 1 bookshelf, a few pans, Olivia's art folder, my photo album, and Gloria's parting gift, a toaster that still had crumbs in it. But it was ours. On the first night, Olivia insisted on sleeping in her own room. She taped her sunflower drawing to the wall above her bed and asked if she could paint the closet door blue. "You can paint the whole room purple with glitter if you want," I told her. "This is your space now." She hugged me so hard I nearly tipped over. Later, after she fell asleep, I walked through the house in socks, turning off lights, touching the walls like they were sacred. I stood in the doorway of my room and whispered a prayer, not one for miracles, but for normalcy. For morning toast. For safe nights. For a child who believed that kindness was strength. And for the woman who finally believed it, too. 6 months passed like a breath. There was no dramatic music. No montage. Just life. Simple. Steady. Beautiful. Mornings in the little yellow house began with the sound of toast popping and the creak of floorboards under slippered feet. Olivia had grown 2 inches, and I'd caught her standing taller not just in body, but in spirit. She no longer asked for permission to laugh. She sang to herself while brushing her teeth. She danced in socks across the kitchen linoleum. Peace had given her roots. Love had given her voice. And somewhere along the way, she gave me mine, too. We kept the routines sacred. Homework at the kitchen table, tea after dinner, story time before bed. She painted her room pale blue, with little clouds above her headboard. Every Sunday, she added something to the gratitude jar we'd made from an old peanut butter container. One note read, "I'm grateful for Grandma's house because it's not loud in the bad way." Another one, "I'm grateful that Grandma never tells me to hush when I cry." We didn't talk much about Meredith. Occasionally, Olivia would mention something. "Mom used to say I cried too much," or "She got mad when I asked for a nightlight." Never with hate, just memory. Quiet, factual reflections of what she had once been taught to bury. There were supervised visits scheduled through family court, but Meredith missed 3 of them. The few she did attend were strained. Meredith sat stiffly, trying to pretend nothing had changed. But Olivia had. She didn't apologize for being herself anymore. And Meredith didn't know how to handle that. Daniel came to one visit alone and stayed the full hour. He brought Olivia a book and asked questions about school. When he left, he looked at me and whispered, "She's better with you." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. The final custody review hearing was scheduled for the end of that 6th month. By then, Olivia had become more than a guest in my life. She was a cornerstone. The court may have required paperwork, affidavits, and evaluations, but we had something stronger: a home. When the day came, I wore the same blouse I'd worn at the first hearing. Not for luck, but to remind myself of how far we'd come. Olivia carried a folder filled with drawings she wanted the judge to see, including one that simply read, "Please don't take me away from my safe place." The judge reviewed everything: the counselor's notes, the updated home study, the letters from Olivia's school praising her improvement in behavior, focus, and emotional expression. Meredith was there. This time, she didn't speak much. Her lawyer made a few quiet arguments, but even he seemed resigned. When the judge asked Olivia one final question, "Where do you feel the most safe, loved, and understood?" she didn't hesitate.
"With my grandma," she said.
Always with her. That was it. There was no gavel bang. No applause. Just the rustle of paper and a firm, final statement. Permanent legal guardianship is hereby awarded to Evelyn Carter. Case closed. I didn't cry in the courtroom. I waited until we were outside. Olivia threw her arms around me in front of the courthouse steps and said, "We did it." "No, baby," I whispered. "You did it. You told the truth and trusted it would be enough."
She grinned.
"Is this what freedom feels like?" "Yes," I said. "And pancakes for dinner." She cheered and jumped as we walked to the bus stop, backpack bouncing against her spine, eyes full of the kind of light I once feared she'd lose forever. We had pancakes that night with too much syrup and whipped cream from a can. She fell asleep halfway through a movie, head in my lap, one hand still gripping the TV remote like she owned the world. And in a way, she did. She'd taken everything meant to break her and turned it into a bridge. She chose her own story, and I was honored to be part of it. Sometimes at night, I still think about that moment in Meredith's kitchen. The sting of her words. "You're not my mother anymore. You're just a burden now." And I smile, because she was wrong. I wasn't a burden. I was the rescue. The net beneath the fall. The softness they tried to erase but couldn't. I was never disposable. I was necessary. And now, I live in a house where laughter is not a threat, where bedtime stories don't end in silence, and where a little girl who was once scared to cry wears her heart like a crown. They said I ruined their lives. But the truth is, I saved hers. And in doing that, I saved mine, too. If you've ever been called a burden just for loving too deeply, drop a heart in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it.